Oh my god, he knows that I'm talking about him. Wow. Oh my god. I should probably try to like clean this. Ew, what was that? I should try to clean this at some point, but it is the Tales of Edgar Allan Poe, illustrated by Fritz Eichenberg, published by Random House. Today we are going to be reading The Black Cat. The Black Cat. The Black Cat. The reason why I'm drawn to this is because I do have a black cat of my own, and I love him, but he is also a beast. He is a monster. He is the biggest threat to my safety, and he actually just, I was responsible for this. I got too close to him while cuddling after I got home from Christmas, and I got too close while cuddling. My folly. And he reached his little sweet paw up and scratched my bottom lip, and I bled so much. Also, please, if I mispronounce something or pronounce something in a funny way, let me know. I want to know. Will it change? Will it improve my pronunciation in the future? That is to be seen. I may trip over my words sometimes, but we'll see if I leave them in or not. The Black Cat. For the most wild, yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad I am not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburden my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world, plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. I've never enunciated consonants so much in my life. We'll see if that holds up. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet I will not attempt to expound them. To me, they have presented little but horror. To many, they will seem less terrible than Baroque. Is it Baroque or Baroques? Hereafter, perhaps, some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace, some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive in the circumstances I detail with awe nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. That is how I feel when I tell people about how my day has gone and how my black cat has influenced it. It's more about nighttime when I first got him, and he was not yet neutered. You will also hear the radiator in the background as well. So again, thank you for the heavy lifting that the rain is doing probably right now, since I've likely added it at this point. He would become an absolute demon, for lack of a better word. I don't even know if that's like the best word to describe it. Like he was a madman. He would yell and yowl and pine at the base of my door because he could tell that there were other cats across the hall. One of them I know is female. I don't know about the other one, and I don't know if she was spayed. I sure hope she was. But I could tell that he knew, and I tried barricading my front door with this ottoman that I had gotten years ago for like $50 at Walmart. It is wrecked by now. I'll probably reupholster it at some point, rip off the fake leather and the foam underneath it that makes it soft, and then I'll replace it with some, I don't know, like corrugated board for his claws, because when I used it to barricade the bottom of the door, he would just scratch at it, and I can't like take that away from him. I can't have it both ways, you know. You have to choose your battles. He doesn't mess with my couch, and for that I am happy. He can do whatever he wants with the ottoman. It is currently full of a bunch of fabric and old clothing that I would like to mend or tailor at some point in my life. It probably will never happen. Anyway, back to the story. Oh yes, there will be a lot of rambling. I hope that you have accepted this if you have gotten this far. Unless you're already asleep, in which case I have done my job. Anyway, from my infancy, I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. For some reason, I don't trust this narrator. Is that just me? Am I... My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. Okay, I believe him now. I was especially fond of animals, and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiarity of character grew with my growth, and in my manhood I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for a faithful and sagacious, it must be sagacious, because sagacious is very difficult to say. For a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of the gratification thus derivable. I hate how people in the 19th century wrote. This is the least worst, but when trying to read stuff like Charles Dickens, it was just like, so much of this is superfluous. Yeah, that's right. There is, like, did people speak like this in real life in the 1800s? Or was this reserved for prose? It must have been. For my sanity, it must have been. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early, and was happy to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black, and sagacious to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I mention the matter at all for no better reason than that it happens just now to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew day by day more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length, I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog when, by accident or through affection, they came in my way. When I trip over my cat, I feel so bad. My first cat, Faye, would act so offended, reasonably so, even though, you'd think standing right or sitting or laying right at my feet while I'm standing in the kitchen, you're not in a place of safety. But I would run after her and apologize and get down on my hands and knees to beg her for forgiveness and give her lots of pets. Usually, especially if I stepped on her tail, I would give her treats. She was not a black cat. She was a long, fluffy furred Nebelong or long-haired blue Russian. With my black cat, he is a lot more understanding of his reckless choices to walk beneath my feet. Is that Wicked? I don't think they're doing it right. I haven't seen it, and I saw the musical on Broadway when I was like 10, so I don't really remember any of it, but that sounds similar to what I've heard people trying to do on random TikToks that make their way onto my feed, despite the fact that I don't use TikTok. I pray to God that they stop being so loud. I'm the biggest hater of fun. But my disease grew upon me, for what disease is like alcohol? And at length even Pluto, who was now becoming old and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him when, in his fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I don't like where this is going. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, Jinn nurtured, thrilled every fiber of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from the socket. I wonder how many of you knew. I wonder how many of you listening to this right now knew. I did not. I did not know. Oh my God. Oh no. Good thing I'm not even monetized to begin with. I blush, I burn, I shudder while I pen the damnable atrocity. That's how I feel too right now. Jesus Christ. When reason returned with the morning, when I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse for the crime of which I had been guilty. But it was, at best, a feeble and equivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess and soon drowned in wine all memory of the deed. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the lost eye presented, it is true, a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature which had once so loved me, but this feeling soon gave place to irritation. And then came, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. Look at this. The spirit of perverseness. Oh God. Let's see if I can put this back on the thing the right way. Praying. Of this spirit, philosophy takes no account, yet I am not more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties or sentiments which give direction to the character of man. Who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or stupid action for no other reason than because he knows he should not? Have we not a perpetual inclination, in the teeth of our best judgment, to violate that which is a law, merely because we understand it to be such? This spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for the wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally to consummate the injury I had inflicted upon the unoffending brute. One morning, in cold blood, I slipped a noose about its neck and hung it to the limb of a tree. Hung it with the tears streaming from my eyes and with the bitterest remorse at my heart. I hung it because I knew that it had loved me, and because I felt it had given me no reason of offense. Hung it because I knew that in so doing I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that would so jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. My man, my good sir, get help. On the night of the day on which this most cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned myself thenceforward to despair. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the atrocity, but I am detailing a chain of facts and wish not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. This exception was found in a compartment wall, not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plastering had here, in great measure, resisted the action of the fire, a fact which I attributed to its having been recently spread. About this wall a dense crowd were collected, and many persons seemed to be examining a particular portion of it with very minute and eager attention. The words "strange," "singular," and other similar expressions excited my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if graven in bas-relief upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with an accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope about the animal's neck. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. But at length reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to the house. I wonder if his wife knew or saw, like, did she was she aware that this happened? What was her response? I mean, she was there with him when the house set fire. So you would hardly think that, you know, if she set the fire herself, that she'd want to risk her safety. I would have just, you know, this is a joke for legal purposes, burnt the house down anyway, regardless if it would happen to me. if my husband ever hanged a cat. And then the temptation to convince him that he's going crazy or that he's being haunted by that cat, I don't know, it seems kind of appealing. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. But at length reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to the house. Upon the alarm of fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd, by someone of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown through an open window into my chamber. This had probably been done with the view of arousing me from sleep. The falling of other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster. Oh God, so it's actually the cat. It's not just a, like, actual bas-relief of it. Oh my God. You know what? Yeah. If I just saw that someone had done this and I knew that it was them and not just some, like, you know, evil prank being done by some, like, neighborhood kids, I mean, I wouldn't want to, you know, throw the cat into their house, but I don't know, a little bit of instant karma sounds kind of nice. Some quick retribution. The falling of other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the lime of which, with the flames and the ammonia from the carcass, had then accomplished the portraiture as I saw it. Although I thus readily accounted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not... I cannot... Why do they write the longest fucking sentences? Although I thus readily accounted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not the less fail to make a deep impression upon my fancy. For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat, and during this period there came back into my spirit a half sentiment that seemed, but was not, remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and had to look about me among the vile haunts which I now habitually frequented for another pet of the same species, and of somewhat similar appearance, with which to supply its place. One night, as I sat wait, did I read that correctly? Is he, like, now trying to find a new replacement black cat? He was looking for another pet of the same species and of somewhat similar appearance to supply its place. Because then I'm saying that he does see a black cat, so I don't think that's just some weird 19th century way of saying that there was a cat sitting in front of him. It looks like he's trying to replace the cat that he killed. This man should not be allowed to have pets. Also, apparently in the US, or in most states of the US, there really aren't very many laws against animal cruelty in the way that you would hope. I think maybe in places like the UK, if I remember correctly from some cases I learned about recently, they do have harsher consequences for people who harm animals, but in the US they just don't, at least in most states, or at least not on a state level. But no, if someone's out here hurting animals, that should be noted. That should be noted. One night, as I sat half stupefied in a den of more than infamy, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object reposing upon the head of one of the immense hogsheads of gin, or of rum, which constituted the chief furniture of the apartment. Is this a college kid? I had been looking steadily at the top of this hogshead for some minutes, and what now caused me surprise was the fact that I had not sooner perceived the object thereupon. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a large cat, a very large one, fully as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every respect but one. Pluto had not a white hair upon any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, although indefinite, splotch of white covering nearly the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my notice. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. That answers my question. Yes. I at once offered to purchase it of the landlord, but this person made no claim to it. I knew nothing of it, and had never seen it before. I continued my caresses, and oh, here's the image if you want to see it. Sorry for the shadow. That's what it feels like when my cat is trying to prevent me from sleeping. No, that's what it feels like when my cat is up on his cat tree, towering above me, because my bed is so low to the ground and his tree is like 5 feet tall. I continued my caresses, and when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. I permitted it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I proceeded. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once, and became immediately a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. God damn it. This was just the reverse of what I had anticipated. But I know not how or why it was, its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed me. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty preventing me from physically abusing it. I did not for some weeks strike or otherwise violently ill-use it, but gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unutterable loathing, and to flee silently from its odious presence, as from the breath of a pestilence. What added, no doubt, to my hatred of the beast was the discovery, on the morning after I brought it home, that, like Pluto, it also had been deprived of one of its eyes. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who, as I have already said, possessed in a high degree that humanity of feeling which had once been my distinguishing trait, and the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity which it would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. If I arose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down. Or see, aside from the violence and, animal death, so much of this is just the normal relationship one has with their pet cat. I don't know why this guy has to be so horrible. If I arose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fastening its long and sharp claws in my dress, clamor in this manner to my breast. At such times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow, I was yet withheld from doing, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess it at once, by absolute dread of the beast. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at loss how otherwise to define it. I am almost ashamed to own, yes, even in this felon's cell, I am almost ashamed to own that the terror and horror with which the animal inspired me had been heightened by one of the merest chimeras it would be possible to conceive. My wife had called my attention more than once to the character of the mark of white hair, of which I have spoken, and which constituted the sole visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally very indefinite, but by slow degrees nearly imperceptible, and which for a long time my reason struggled to reject as fanciful. It had at length assumed a rigorous distinctness of outline. It was now the representation of an object that I shudder to name, and for this above all I loathed and dreaded, and would have rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say, the image of a ghastly thing, of the gallows. Oh, mournful and terrible engine of horror and of crime, of agony and of death. And now, was I indeed wretched beyond the wretchedness of mere humanity, and a brute beast whose fellow I had contemptuously destroyed, a brute beast to work out for me, a man fashioned to the image of the high God, so much of insufferable woe. Alas, neither by day nor by night knew I the blessing of rest any more. During the former, again, literally me when I first got my cat, all night screaming, all night screeching. It would never end. It's simply from 10 p.m. to like 4 a.m. It was just madness. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone, and in the latter I started hourly from dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face, and its vast weight, and an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent eternally upon my heart. That is what it feels like. My cat's only 11 pounds, but like, my cat before him was so light that when my black cat is sitting on my chest, it's heavy. It is. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates, the darkest and most evil of thoughts. The moodiness of my usual temper increased to hatred of all things and of all mankind, while from the sudden, frequent, and ungovernable outbursts of fury to which I now blindly abandoned myself, my uncomplaining wife, alas, was the most usual, and the most patient of sufferers. God, I feel so bad for her. One day she accompanied me upon some household errand into the cellar of the old building which our poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat followed me down the steep stairs and, nearly throwing me headlong, exacerbated me to madness. Sorry. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. Uplifting an axe and forgetting in my wrath the childish dread which had hitherto stayed my hand, I aimed a blow at the animal, which of course would have proved instantly fatal had it descended as I wished. But this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife. Goaded by the interference into a rage more than demoniacal, I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. Did you guys know about this? I didn't know about this. My God. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. God. Again, like I said, people who hurt animals should be on a list. You should be able to know if someone has hurt an animal because that makes them much more likely to hurt people too. As far as I can tell, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith and with entire deliberation to the task of concealing the body, of course. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being observed by the neighbors. Many projects entered my mind. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another, I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. Again, I deliberated about casting it in the well in the yard, about packing it in a box as if merchandise with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally, I hit upon what I considered a far better expedient than either of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are recorded to have walled up their victims. What? Were there monk victims? For a purpose such as this, the cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the dampness of the atmosphere had prevented from hardening. Oh, perfect. It's just like sticking your hand into a drying cement. Just shove a whole body into it. I wonder how many, like, this is morbid, I'm sorry. I mean, again, should not be laughing, but I wonder how often, just, like, animals or other things end up in concrete. I really hate this. I hate this, but I have to keep going. I can't stop here. Oh no. I feel like it would be really funny if I had like a face, I don't know, like a part of the screen showing my face and my reactions to these things as I read like most of Poe for the very first time. Let me know if that would be a thing that would be interesting, I guess. The thing is, I just hate having to make myself presentable, so it's probably not gonna happen. Moreover, in one of the walls was a projection caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up and made to resemble the rest of the cellar. I made no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at this point, insert the corpse, and wall the whole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. And in this calculation I was not deceived. By means of a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, and having carefully deposited the body against the inner wall, I propped it in that position, while, with little trouble, I relaid the whole structure as it originally stood. How big are these bricks? Oh, he has okay. Mortar, sand, hair. Okay, alright. I'm just imagining her, like, is she, like, standing up? Like, could the weight of the dead body, like, push out on the bricks or something? I feel like it would. Whatever. Anyway, having procured mortar, sand, and hair with every possible precaution, I prepared a plaster which could not be distinguished from the old, and with this I very carefully went over the new brickwork. When I had finished, I felt satisfied that all was right. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with the minutest care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, "Here at least, then, my labor has not been in vain." This is a dark comedy. This is a dark comedy. This is so. My next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much wretchedness. Now he has a reason to go after this black cat, because before, the previous black cat did nothing wrong, but this one killed his wife. So now he doesn't have to have any guilt associated with it, for I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at the moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate, but it appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and forebore to present itself in my present mood. But it appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and forebore to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe or to imagine the deep... See, there's more church bells. I've been doing this for an hour. It is impossible to describe or to imagine the blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. It did not make its appearance during the night, and thus for one night at least, since its introduction into the house. It is important to describe or to imagine the blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. It did not make its appearance during the night, and thus for one night, at least, since its introduction into the house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept even with the burthen of murder upon my soul. The second and the third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again I breathed as a free man. Oh, God. The monster, in terror, had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little. Some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Hey, where's your wife? Oh, she's just running some errands. Even a search had been instituted, but of course nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the fourth day of the assassination, a party of the police came very unexpectedly into the house and proceeded again to make rigorous investigation of the premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment whatsoever. The officers bade me accompany them in their search. They left no nook nor corner unexplored. At length, for the third or fourth time, they descended into the cellar. I quivered not in a muscle. My heart beat calmly as that of one who slumbers in innocence. I walked the cellar from end to end. I folded my arms upon my bosom and roamed easily to and fro. That's suspicious behavior, man. I'm sorry. That isn't, no, this is, you should not be calm. while the cops are conducting a missing persons or murder investigation on your wife. Calm. Whether you're innocent or not. I know I'm saying obvious stuff here, but this is so funny. Whew. Okay. Not suspicious at all, my guy. I folded my arms upon my bosom and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. The glee at my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say, if but one word, by way of triumph and to render doubly sure their assurance of my guiltlessness. "Gentlemen," I said at last, as the party ascended the steps, "I delight to have allayed your suspicions. I wish you all health and a little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house." He pats the bricks. This is... I'm picturing like Patrick Bateman doing this. In the rabid desire to say something easily, I scarcely knew what I uttered at all. I may say, an excellently well-constructed house. These walls... Are you going, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together. And here, through the mere frenzy of bravado, I rapped heavily with a cane, which I held in my hand, upon that very portion of the brickwork behind which stood the corpse of the wife of my bosom. But may God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the arch-fiend. No sooner had the reverberation of my blows sunk into silence than I was answered by a voice from within the tomb, by a cry, at first muffled and broken, like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud, and continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman, a howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly from the throats of the damned and their agony, and of the demons that exult in the damnation. Of my own thoughts it is folly to speak. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant, the party on the stairs remained motionless, through extremity of terror and awe. In the next, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. Oh my God, speak of the devil. Oh my God, he knows that I'm talking about him. Wow. Of my thoughts it is folly to speak. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant, the party on the stairs remained motionless, through extremity of terror and awe. In the next, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. It fell bodily. God. Oh no, he's back. He's back. Cat cam. Cat cam. Hi. Hi. The wretched beast. In the next, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. It fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, with red extended mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast, whose craft had seduced me into murder, and whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman. I had walled the monster up within the tomb. Oh God, my throat's dry, but that's exactly what it sounded like when the boy was not neutered. The loud, long, The long, loud, continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman, a wailing shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly with the throats of the damned and their agony, and of the demons that exult in the damnation. That's exactly what you sounded like. That's exactly what you sounded like. Oh, you're such a sweetie. Thank you for joining us. Oh. Hi. 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 Did you enjoy the story? Did you enjoy the story? Do you like Edgar Allan Poe? Hi. Hi. Hi, wretched beast. Anyway, thank you for listening to my reading of The Black Cat. I hope that it has been entertaining or relaxing in some way, somehow. And let me know if you have any requests, I guess. Let me know what you liked. Let me know what you didn't like. Anyway, have a good rest of your day, night, or evening, and I will see you later.